for the speaker? Or you have one for him? Okay. Brandon, are you good?
And he was sheltered by the Indians in Rhode Island. Escaped, canoed down to New York with the king, got insured on Rhode Island colony. They tried to kill him because he spoke out against the Puritans' control. They did the same thing the Church of England has done. Anyway, nice meeting you.
Brandon
Pouliot.
Pouliot, sorry.
No problem.
If I get it wrong, I apologize. Pouliot. Okay, we have our next session beginning here just in a few seconds. So if you haven't got comfortable yet, please do so. And I think you could probably move down closer if you wish as well and make it a smaller group. But we have Brandon Pouliot. Okay, did I get it right? That is going to present Mobile in the Mind. And if you have any questions, please do ask, but also be wary that the microphone is the only way you'll be heard to those who are joining us online. So Brandon, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brandon Pouliot. My official title right now is I'm a technical support specialist. I am also the learning management system administrator at Laramie County Community College. I've worked in higher ed for quite a long time. I started in 2008 as a work study. And while I was going to school for astrophysics, which is my undergrad, I kind of fell into instructional technology as an interest, a passion, and something that I was pretty good at. So one of the largest trends that actually, if you didn't know, started all the way back in like 2007 or even earlier than that, is students using mobile technology and even instructors using mobile technology for their courses. That's not only in the classroom, that is, a student has a bus ride, a commute from one place to another. They have some downtime between school and work. They have their phone with them, or they have their tablet with them. They're not going to cart their laptop around with them everywhere. They're not going to take their school books around with them everywhere. And so what I want to talk a little bit about today is keeping mobile in mind when you develop your course, when you develop your activities, all of the materials that you select, and some simple kind of technical ways that you can go in and make your course really, really easily accessible through a mobile device that really don't take you a whole lot of time. First, we're going to look at probably some statistics here. Actually, I guess first I'm going to give you a little bit of background. So, like I said, in 2008, I started as a student. I started as a work study right around the same time, but as my second job, I worked at Best Buy. So I got kind of the inside track on mobile phones. I was definitely one of the first adopters when Android came out. I had an iPhone for about a year, and that was the worst year of my life. But I love using technology in every aspect of my life. While I was a student both at a community college and then CU Boulder later, where I got my bachelor's degree, I used a tablet for 90% of what I did. Because I worked at Best Buy, I got a nice discount on one of them. Thought, hey, you know, I'll never use it. I ended up using it to read all of my textbooks. I had a friend who worked at FedEx. And so I had him cut the binding off of all of my books that didn't have digital copies, scan them all in, and send me the PDFs, just so that I could bring all those with me. I have a passion for this, and I wouldn't say that I'm a huge expert, can tell you what apps to use in the classroom, things like that. I'm more on the end of developing your course to make sure that you and your students can use it in a mobile environment. One of the biggest things to consider when you're looking at using mobile devices in your classroom is you're never going to find that your students all have the same device. As I said, I am very much an Android person, but you will have a lot of people who are just as passionately Apple folks. You may not find the same app is available for both of them. You may not find that they display the same way. An iPhone 5 is far different than an iPhone 7 Plus. Way different. And so taking all of that into consideration, you're never going to find that everything is going to be perfect. One of the studies that I consulted for this when I did kind of a literature review was a study that said, and I can't remember which university it was, there was a university that did a survey of mobile devices on their campuses, and in one day, they had 36,000 different unique connections with 18 different operating systems. And so that's iOS, Android, Linux, Unix, OS X, Windows. I've got 6. Can anybody help me name the other 12? Probably not. You're not going to find a consensus with all of this. And what I'm here to say is that you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to sweat that small stuff. Most of the time, if you stick to standards, you're going to be able to present your course to your students regardless of what device they're using. I should have brought my little clicker. I didn't think about that this morning. So a couple of different stats here. We have 94% of higher ed leaders that think students should be able to access their courses on any device they have without any difference in experience. And so what that means is they want it to be equitable, regardless of what kind of device people are using, regardless of where they are. But those same folks have absolutely no idea how to do it. We are all working towards that. You have a lot of schools that are using virtual connections to be able to mimic using a computer on a device, but that stuff is still developing. One of the most interesting stats to me, we have about 80, last time I checked the stat, about 80% mobile device penetration, meaning a smartphone or a tablet, and that's globally. 58%, almost 60% of students own 3 or more. So this is why this is something incredibly important. If we look at the Horizon Report, does everybody know what the Horizon Report is? No? I saw a couple heads say no. So the Horizon Report looks at emergent trends in educational technology and gives a timeline to adoption for kind of standard adoption. Not the early adopters, but where most folks will be. And so in 2007, mobile learning was in the 2 to 3 years for adoption. Last time I checked, it was 2016, and I don't think we've really adopted mobile learning, M-learning. It was also in the 2 to 3 year adoption in 2008. And in 2015, it was in the 1 year to adoption category. What that means is that we are lagging behind as far as making sure that our virtual environments, that our classrooms not only use the technology, but embrace the technology in a multitude of different ways. My end is on much more of the technical side, making sure that mobile devices work with the learning management system, looking at courses and the tools that they use, and making sure all of those work with mobile devices, or telling folks who are using them, hey, this isn't going to work. For example, publisher materials are kind of a big hurdle. But I also like to brainstorm. I also like to think of all the wonderful, cool, awesome activities that you can do with a lot of the tools that are out there. And so we'll look at some of that a little bit later. And I forgot to say this at the beginning. If you have a question, just raise your hand, interrupt me. I am more than fine with that. I'd rather nobody get lost or forget a question. So you can see at the bottom what devices students own. 95% say a smartphone, 57% a tablet, and 29% have an ebook reader. I myself own a Kindle, and that was the most amazing revelation that I had while I was in school. I no longer had to carry around 3 or 4 thick textbooks. I had one small little rectangle device that I could keep with me, and I just had all my books at my fingertips. I just got admitted to grad school here at UW, and I have almost all of my textbooks. One of them doesn't have an ebook edition, and my friend no longer works at FedEx. But I have almost all of those on my Kindle as well, including the APA manual. If anybody needs to use that, there is a digital version available, which is much easier to use. You can also see that these stats are from 2015. You can see that more people own an iPhone than an Android, so I guess I'm in the minority. Does anybody know what this is? I got one nod yes, a couple smiles. So this is the FirstWorld Problems meme. These are things like, let's see. The batteries run out too fast on my super fancy remote with an LED screen, and it won't use rechargeable batteries. I put this up here because there are a lot of hurdles, there are a lot of problems with mobile learning, especially if you're an instructor or you're a designer trying to integrate this technology into your course. There are a lot of things that you might need to look at or address before you implement this. Implement any kind of mobile strategy in your courses. I mentioned a couple of them. One of them being publisher materials. I have not found a publisher yet, so Pearson, McGraw-Hill, Cengage, that doesn't use Flash for everything they want your students to do. And guess what? Flash does not work on mobile devices. There's a workaround, you can get it to work on Android. Will not work on iPhone no matter what. Those are things to consider when looking at what materials you're going to select for your course. Anybody have any problems that they specifically have faced when using mobile technology or trying to get their students to use mobile technology in their classroom or with their course? I see a hand.
Sometimes when using apps, right, there are so many, great apps that can be deployed for educational purposes, and so many times you've got the free version, you got the paid version. The paid version can be all over the map in terms of what it costs, and what we see as a nominal expense is not a nominal expense for a lot of our students. So, boy, is that a hassle.
So paid apps versus free apps, the kind of what I like to call the illusion of choice, because there's so many options out there, you may not know which one to pick. So that's part of what I do as an academic technologist, educational technologist, whatever label you want to throw on it, is look at those things. And really what I look to assess is you want to make sure that your app or how you're integrating mobile technology into your course is more than a novelty. You don't just want to select an app because you go, oh, that's cool and it will kind of work with this. You want it to be integral to the learning process that you've designed with the learning activity. And the other portion of things, as far as paid versus free, a lot of the time I'll try out both and see what the difference between them is. If there are features that you don't necessarily need, that you get with the paid version, I wouldn't have students pay for it. Just say, hey, use the free version. Go ahead and deal with the ads, sorry. Another portion of it is if you really, really like the paid version, or there is not a free version of a certain app that you want to use, you're right. Most of the time, $5 can be the difference between lunch on a Friday and having to wait until Monday when you get paid. I think most of us have probably been there before. that's one of those that you can make the consideration, and you can say, hey, we want to use this. You can, if you're not teaching at a distance and you're using it in your classroom, you can have students pair up. Because the other thing is, if I go back, this survey says 95% of students own a smartphone. That is probably a fairly small sample size. I know that the research that this was done by was from a publisher, and so they were definitely trying to push, hey, mobile learning is here, go ahead and adopt it in your classroom. But you're still going to have some students who have a BlackBerry, which is going to be less capable than an iPhone. You're going to have someone who has probably an old Nokia brick phone. Those things never die, but they're not a smartphone either. You will run into parts and pieces like that. And at a distance, it becomes just a little bit harder to do that. But those are things that you can always address. And as long as you include that information up front in your syllabus, you'll have plenty of time to kind of work out those details with your students. Any other questions? First world problems? Okay. So I kind of want to go over a couple of recommendations. One of the big ones is looking at publishers or books that are going to have digital resources available that are actually usable on a smartphone or another mobile device. And so that means if you're having your students go into My Math Lab, is there another alternative that's going to allow them to use their mobile device? Because My Math Lab does not. Some of the publishers have apps, and those apps are free. I know Cengage has an app. I think McGraw-Hill has an app. You can look at those and see, hey, will this allow my students to complete the assignments that they want to do, or that I want them to complete? Another piece that goes along with what book you select is try and make sure there's an ebook if you can. A lot of time ebook options are cheaper, and they allow students to use a Kindle or a Nook or a tablet or even a phone. There's a Kindle app for both Android and iOS, and any Kindle books that you buy, you can read on those devices. You can sync between devices. That makes it super easy wherever you are, kind of the thought of anywhere, anytime learning, to be able to read, to catch up, to look ahead. Now there's a couple of other things that are just kind of little basic tips and tricks. If you're going to use things like videos, make sure that they are a platform that's accessible on a mobile device. I know YouTube and Vimeo are kind of two of the front runners as far as that goes, and they both use HTML5, which is accessible from Android, iPhone, Linux, whatever operating system you want to use. They're embeddable, but you can also do things to make your videos a little more accessible, looking closer to the universal design for learning standpoint of giving your students multiple options. So give them the embedded video, but give them a link as well. Those are just little things that you can do to kind of make sure that, hey, if your student's having trouble looking at that embedded video, you already told them where they can go. You've made sure that they have an alternate mode to reach that resource that you expect them to watch, to listen to, the activity you expect them to complete. I also kind of want to introduce maybe a couple more technical means to try and make sure that what you present to your students, mainly through a learning management system, is going to be accessible to them. Because I want you to actually have something that you can use when you leave here. I don't want to be all theoretical. Use your HTML editor in your learning management system. All of them have one. All of them are rich text. They have a nice bar up top that gives you the ability to format your text. Most of them allow you to copy and paste from a Word document, and although that looks horrifying to me, and I know my colleague Laura would say that as well, but you're presenting your materials to your students in a way that is platform agnostic, so it looks the same whether it's on an iPhone, an Android, a desktop, a netbook, a laptop, whatever device they're going to use. It's going to look the same and give them that same experience. You're going to make it much more equitable. These are what I'm talking about. So, it's hard to see from the back. There's not a lot of light. I got some HTML code in the background just to frighten everyone. But then I have the actual HTML editors here. This one is from Canvas. This one is the one from D2L. If you look at those, it gives you the same tools that you have in Word or Pages or OpenOffice, Google Docs. It gives you those options, plus some. Because it's easier to embed a video or an image in here than it is to do in Word. You ever go into Word and insert your image and you start typing and it moves everything? Or you can't get it to sit just right on the page? You don't really have that problem here. Insert a line, insert your image, hit enter, you're done. There's none of that alignment of your image, anything like that that you really have to worry about. All of these HTML editors also give you the opportunity to learn a little bit of HTML, possibly from someone like me, or ignore it altogether. You can make things pretty, but you don't necessarily have to. You can put in your information, change your fonts, put in your images, add links, add videos, whatever you'd like, and then work on the rest later. But this is a way that makes sure that your students can access the materials that they need to on whatever device they choose to use. Another thing that I want to introduce is when you insert images in here, you can use something called relative width. So when you insert an image, it goes to a specific resolution, which is going to be the exact size of the image that you put in, and this is going to go pretty quick, but it loops. So you can take a look. This is in D2L. When you insert an image, D2L prompts you for alt text as well, so that's definitely a great idea to add. This image is gigantic, and you can see me trying to resize it multiple times. Instead, if I go into the HTML, and all I do is I take this width of the image, I make it 80% of my page, I delete the height, I hit save, and now you can see it automatically sized. But if I expand or contract that window, it automatically sizes. This is something that's incredibly simple that you can do in any of your courses that you don't really need much HTML knowledge in. That will make it so much easier so that a student who pulls out their phone and pulls up your course, looks at an image, doesn't have to scroll all the way to the right. It doesn't blow up their whole screen. They don't have to pinch and make everything smaller so that they can see your image. Regardless of their screen size, this is going to allow them to see those images that you put in. Relative width. And so it's relative because whatever size your page is, whatever resolution your screen is, that 80% that I put in up there, it's going to take up 80% of whatever screen size you give it. So if you take your phone portrait or landscape, it'll be 80%, and it'll be a different resolution each way, but it will match that when it changes. Any questions about that one? That's the most technical I'll get, I promise, and it's not that scary. Sure. So I'm going to go back a page so that you can look both in Canvas and in D2L. Do we have any other LMSs in here? No. Cool. Okay, so D2L, top left. This little button right here, the carrots with the slash, that's going to let you in. On Canvas, top right, HTML editor. So you have a link to get to that. If you have questions about resources, I didn't really include what I've used in the past in here, but there are amazing resources online as far as HTML and kind of understanding just simple basic pieces. If you're interested in that, you can just let me know, and I will point you the direction that I went when I first started learning HTML, and that can be helpful. And now we get to the part where I tie this back into why you should do it. So have most people heard of UDL, Universal Design for Learning? So I went through the UDL Center's website, and they have this awesome infographic, and I cut it to pieces. And then I kind of identified the parts and pieces that I was interested in and that I thought, keeping mobile in mind while designing your course, could help you with. And I have the link to the full infographic up there with all of the tiers of information, but I tried to summarize it and not include the stuff that I didn't need. So we already kind of went over the first part over here, offering ways of customizing the display of information. We've given a ton of different options. I told you to provide a good way to help your students would be to provide multiple ways to access your materials. Varying the methods of response and navigation. That's exactly what we're trying to do by providing students the opportunity to use a mobile device, regardless of which one it may be. So they don't just have to use a computer. You can't tell students, oh, well, you know, my course doesn't really work with a Mac, it only works with a Windows machine, you can't use Linux, probably shouldn't use your phone, and it's got Flash, so you can't really use this piece, that piece, or the other piece. The simple recommendations that I have are to help make sure that we are varying the methods for response and navigation. And the second part as well, optimizing access to tools and assistive technologies. So you may or may not know this, but mobile devices provide a very interesting and portable way to use assistive technologies. There's all kinds of screen readers and apps out there that are assistive technologies. You have more that comes on your phone for accessibility than you do that comes with a standard desktop computer that runs Windows 10. The last piece, optimizing individual choice and autonomy. Super easy. You're allowing your students to do whatever they want, whenever they want, as far as accessing the materials. You're giving them carte blanche as far as how they access them. You're ensuring that whatever choice they make, they are able to get access to what you want them to have. And the last piece goes more towards apps and things like Twitter or assignments that you may actually create to incorporate learning activities. You may incorporate mobile technology into your classroom in. And we can talk a little bit more about this. So these parts and pieces are just part of the whole as far as UDL guidelines go. So I highly recommend that you go take a look at those if you have not. It was made by CAST, and it's available on the UDL Center's website. If you just search UDL Center, it's one of the things that's on their homepage. Super easy to get to, and great recommendations there. Any questions on that piece? So this is one that I go back to the anytime, anywhere myth of kind of online learning. It's not something that is currently possible for a lot of folks. It's not something that students have been able to realize as of yet. But providing access to their courses through their mobile devices, of which 60% own 3, gives them an opportunity to take a step closer to managing their time a little bit more wisely, giving them the opportunity to look at whatever you have, whether it be learning activities, learning resources, on their own time. And it also allows them to be more efficient with their time. And guess what? It works both ways. So there is an app for Canvas. There are several apps for D2L as well, including an assignment grader that allows you to grade online assignments through D2L. And it's really simple and it's really cool. If you have like an iPad Pro, and you have the little pencil that goes with it, you can sit there and mark up documents just the same way that you would with a pen and paper. And it's asynchronous in the sense that you can, while you're doing your commute, hopefully not driving, but to each their own, you can sit there and grade everything while you're offline, while you don't have internet access. And right when you hook back up to internet access, it's going to upload those graded documents, upload those grades, and publish all of that information straight to the learning management system. So doing things this way not only ensures that your students can access their materials, but it also makes sure that if you need to access your materials, well, guess what? The HTML editors work on a phone. It's a little bit harder to use a word processor on a phone. They do exist, but on an iPhone 5, which is like that wide, it's really hard. So I have just a couple more things. What we're looking at here is trying to catch up to where innovators and educational professionals think we should have been 3 to 4 years ago. We should have been looking at mobile devices quite a long time ago, not just necessarily to integrate them into our classrooms, but to ensure that our students can use them during the course of their education. And I feel that mobile device compatibility is kind of in the same spot that accessibility is in. A lot of people are struggling to try and get everything up to snuff, trying to make sure that all students can access their materials at any point in time, and also struggling with guidelines as far as what they should do, what they need to do, and what is possible for them to do. And I only shared a few tips today. I hope some of those are helpful. A lot of this is hopefully to spark your interest and maybe go home and examine your own course or the courses that you've worked on and look at those and maybe even right now, pull it up on your mobile device. Look at it. Does it work? Can you access those course materials? Can you complete the learning activities that you've expected your students to complete? Can you do any of that? The answer for a lot of folks is probably no, but then there's some of you who will probably be very happily surprised that you can. And some of these tips will help you get there. Really what I want to get across is that we're in the 21st century. We are over a decade past when smartphones first came out. Everybody in this room likely uses a smartphone on a daily basis, not just to make phone calls, but to check emails, to do their job, to do research, to go on Reddit, which is one of my favorite things. But we don't expect our students to do the same, to use their mobile devices to manage their lives, because being a student is a very large portion of their lives, a very large portion. So I think it's time that, being in the 21st century, it's time that we allow our students to join us in the 21st century and use their mobile devices in our classrooms. And there are a lot of ways that you can do that. There are simple ones, like we've already gone over, but there are ideas for specific assignments that you can do as well. And that's kind of what I would be interested in. Does anybody have any ideas of something they may have tried or would like to try, or apps they're interested in that we can maybe investigate? Because I have ideas, but I've been talking for a while now. Okay, so one of my ideas, we can actually grab an app or really a social media platform, something like Twitter or Vine, and you can ask your students to explain a difficult concept in a 5-second video or a 140-character tweet. that's much, much harder than you would expect. So those are things that hopefully get them thinking about a number of things. Their communication skills. How do you get the point across for a difficult subject over the course of 140 characters or 5 seconds without just yelling gibberish at a camera or not using punctuation and spaces, things like that. You can also have your students research something on Reddit. Have any of you used Reddit? I only saw one, yes. Okay, so Reddit it bills itself as the front page of the internet. A lot of what you see is cute animal pictures and some news and memes. But there are communities on Reddit called subreddits that are as specific as there's an educational technology one. There's one for K-12 educators. There are ones as broad as technology. There's ones that, there's one for astrophotography, which I frequented for quite a while, that tells you basics, and it has people with, $50,000 astrophotography setups that will tell you how to do things with your camera phone and a set of binoculars. There are places like Ask Science that have, just wildly broad communities of expertise. Everyone from folks like myself with a bachelor's degree to people who are professors at universities who share their expertise with the broader community of Reddit. You have all of these options on there, but just like the internet, the front page of the internet, you will have to sort through all of the cat pictures and memes to get through that. And the reason I like that assignment is simply because it tests communication skills again, but it also speaks to information literacy. Is it something that you can pull a fact out of a Reddit post and use that as a source for something? Probably not. But can you get a great answer from someone on Reddit who knows what they're talking about and spark your own research to figure out what you need to know about whatever subject it is you're looking at? Absolutely. Any ideas? Hey, got some hands now, all right.
So I'm currently taking a writing for the web class, and actually I had an assignment due last night. It was with Jing video, and basically what you had to do was you describe what you're actually seeing on the screen, and it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So it took me almost a good 2 hours to get it right, because you had to because basically what it does is it captures anything on your screen. If you're not familiar with Jing, it captures anything that's on your screen. What you put in the crosshairs, you can either take a still or you can take a video. And during that video, you can talk and record over that at the same time. So it was a great assignment. Like I said, it was hard. So.
Well, I tweet, and one of my goals is to still incorporate Twitter into my classes, and I haven't quite gotten there yet because of the bells and whistles. It's one bell and whistle too many. But what I wanted to raise was an example from last night. I participate in a blog. It's called Blog Chat. And if you're on Twitter, the hashtag is Blog Chat. And it's a huge local community of bloggers. And there is, others do it, but there's a University of South Florida social media course. They're learning PR. It's a PR class. They're learning kind of how to engage. And so one of their assignments is to wander around and find chats that interest them. And last night, Blog Chat was kind of overrun by University of South Florida social media students, asking a lot of great questions and getting a lot of answers from kind of expert people. They could use a little etiquette lesson from time to time, but I thought that was a great authentic way. And if you look through their course hashtag, you can see that they're out there in several chats along the way, just related to whatever. So.
Wonderful, thank you. So on that same note, if you're ever interested, I know that last night Dr. Tanya Doucet actually hosted YO Ed Chat on Twitter. And you can get tons of information about kind of what's happening here. I know the topic last night was makerspaces and kind of how to bring them into your school. So if you're interested in any of that kind of emergent technology, emergent trends, there's not just national stuff on Twitter, but there's also local Wyoming kind of happenings and information about resources you can use, experiences people have had, and I'm sure even vendors go on there. So thanks for your ideas. I definitely appreciate it. So we got a few more minutes, but I kind of wanted to close with a quote from somebody connected to my undergraduate background, just slightly. And it was Albert Einstein. He said, "I never teach my pupils. I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn." And what I'm trying to say is I think that it's our responsibility as an educational community to provide the conditions for 21st century students to learn in a modern classroom. And I think that includes mobile technology at the forefront. That's about all I got for today. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Well, I can see this happening. You know, my kids go to the university here and they use their tablets for lots. But what about in high schools? Does it have a place for that? Do they have a place for this? Sorry.
That's a great question. I think that when we look at things like the Horizon report that I mentioned earlier, which if you didn't know what it was, please go check it out. I don't know if the 2017 report's out yet, but I know the 2016 one is. K-12 educators are the ones who catch on the fastest. They are the ones who push forward the initiatives. You can see that in something that's a passion of mine, which is game-based learning. And they're doing things like, hey, let's all go into Minecraft and build things. And they do the same with mobile devices. If you ever hear about one-to-one initiatives, they select a device and they go, okay, every student gets one of these devices. The most common one's an iPad. I would go Android, just not a Note 7. But they're providing these to their students, and they're doing the very things that I spoke about. They're providing all of their learning resources on their iPads. They're actually providing more information to parents than they could have possibly gotten before they had an iPad. They're letting the parents get into the learning management systems and check progress reports and grades and get reports and everything like that. So I absolutely think that mobile education, mobile learning has a place in K-12. I think budgets are probably one of those things that gets in the way sometimes. But I think I've got two young nephews, and both of them already know how to use the iPad before they can hold a conversation with me. So I think kids are growing up on it now. Most of you would assume I grew up on it, but that is definitely not the case. I think it can add, but I think it has to be constructive. I go back to my point earlier that it needs to be integral to the learning rather than a novelty. Any other questions?
Just a comment that's not specifically mobile, but I had a blogging assignment in one of my classes, my graduate classes. And whenever I get the, oh, this is so hard, I can't learn this, why are we doing this? Then I would show them blogs written by second graders. You know, interacting with students around the world. So yeah, my research, there's a lot going on K-12, and they're kind of ahead of a lot of us.
So I'll close and I'll say thank you to everyone for coming, and consider making your course mobile friendly. I do have business cards with me if anybody wants my information. Just let me know, but I think we're on time, so I'll be quiet now. Thanks for coming.